Hello, Somerville. My name is Ed Halloran, and welcome to another episode of the Somerville Labor Show. I am your host, and I'm going to tell you, we have been doing these now for about 2 or 3 months, and I've had the distinct pleasure of meeting many people. Really enjoyed it. But, you know, we never had the opportunity to speak to an attorney, and now we do have an attorney who has been in the business for over 40 years, approaching 50, I believe. So he knows labor law like no other, in my opinion. I've known this gentleman for quite a while now. So when we talk about labor and rights of the employer under the law, many of us don't know where to turn for this advice. Unions throughout Massachusetts and the country have gone through recent changes in the law, and most recently, the Janus decision, Right to Work Supreme Court decision, has had an impact on unions' daily operation and its protection of its membership. Al McDonald is the founder of the labor law firm McDonald Lamond Canzoneri and has been practicing labor law approaching 50 years. And I would love to read this, this Fearless and Effective from his website, which I really enjoyed. In the halls of government, at the bargaining table, and on picket lines at some of the most powerful organizations in New England and throughout the country, we fight shoulder to shoulder with our labor union clients to protect workers' rights and secure fair compensation for all. So, with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Alan McDonald. Alan, welcome to the Labor Show.
Thank you, Ed. It's an honor to be here.
I'm telling you, it's an honor for me to have you on the show because I've known you for so long now, and I know that you're busy constantly, and I know that you're the type of a man who doesn't really do many interviews, but it's great to have you. Give me a little history. I know that you represent the Somerville Police Union, the Somerville Police, the patrol officers, and the superior officers as well.
Yes.
And you also represent the Somerville Employees Association, which is the union that I represent.
Correct. As
president. And you have a long history. Can you give me an idea of how this happened? Because I think there's a story to this and how you actually became representing the SMEA, and maybe you can give me a little sense of what happened there.
Well, I was fresh out of law school. I joined a union side labor law firm, and within 2 or 3 months, I was asked to handle a case for the SMEA. I did. I became acquainted with the leadership, and that was 45 years ago, and it's continued until today. So.
I'm sorry to laugh.
Yeah.
What year was that about?
1973.
1973. I was around then.
But, and you're still around, which is,
yeah, I'm still
even
around.
Better.
My technical director, Jude Sylvain. Were you around 1973? No, he wasn't. He's a young man.
Most people I meet haven't been around.
Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about, and you know, we have to start early on here because there's a calling for everybody, and it just happens. And I got mine, and I may continue to get more. Who knows? Was there a defining moment in your life when you just knew something? You were just getting pulled into this whole labor law thing, this labor attorney thing. Did anything happen?
Well, I think my career started when I decided I couldn't hit a curveball. That's what I usually say to people.
There you go.
Yeah, like many boys.
They're hard to hit today too.
Being a baseball player was top of my list when I was a young boy. But I worked going to college summers at a paper mill in the northern part of New York State, and it was very interesting for me to participate. I worked rotating 3 shifts, which has become a big deal in the labor business because of its unhealthy impacts on workers. I didn't realize it at the time, but I knew I was off. My biorhythms weren't working right, but I worked on the paper machines, I worked in the electrical shop, and in my summer after my junior year, there had been a wildcat strike at the company, at the paper mill that winter. It was over orders to work mandatory overtime in excess, the workers believed, and they walked out.
Familiar with that?
They finally agreed to come back in when the employer agreed that they would arbitrate whether there was a reasonable basis for disciplining the leader of the walkout, who was suspended for a number of days. And because they knew I was interested in going to law school, it was a small union, they didn't have a lot of resources, they asked me if I would litigate the case for them, handle the case for
And
them
you were,
in arbitration.
what age were you at that point, Alan?
I was probably 20 at the time. So the hearing was held. It was a Georgia Pacific paper mill. They brought in an attorney from Boston to handle the case for management.
I'm sure,
It
and
was
I'm sure he was a high.
a seasoned,
Oh yeah,
very
seasoned veteran.
capable,
Oh yeah.
very capable guy, and somehow we got through the case, and it was fun in a way, but it was a novel experience for me. I basically mimicked what I saw the management lawyer doing, but with an emphasis on my
So were you
questions.
studying for law at the time?
I wasn't studying, no, but I had an interest in going to law school.
What were you actually studying for at the time when this happened?
I was a history,
Just
French
trying to,
double major.
okay, just like most
right.
most students,
Liberal
just
arts.
trying to
liberal
figure it
arts,
out and get around.
exactly,
Yeah, I
exactly,
understand that at all. I mean,
exactly.
so it's actually, to me, it's amazing. I never knew that, and you won.
We won.
What was the outcome though? What had to happen? What was the?
Well, they
arbitrator's ruling?
arbitrator removed the discipline from the leader's record and restored his pay.
And did they give these people some better working conditions rather than being forced to work 16 straight hours?
Yeah, that led to an improvement. I think the company also learned a lesson from the walkout. They didn't want it again. Every time the machines go down, they lose money.
Well,
And,
also to get lit up by a young attorney, a young man who wasn't, you didn't pass the bar at the time, right?
I wasn't even in law school, so I was very fortunate. And
That's
I must
pretty
say, the management lawyer, his name is Arthur Stevenson, from Goodwin, Proctor & Horst, still a major firm in Boston, was very gracious and took it easy on me, not to in any way affect the outcome, but he could have been a lot harsher, like some I've run into since. Try to be sometimes.
Well, I find it amazing.
I credit him a lot for his.
Let me ask you this
Yeah,
question. This isn't one of my prepared questions, but as we talk, I think about things. What advice would you give someone who is attempting to become a labor attorney? What's the number one thing you usually tell young people when they want to get into labor law?
Well, first I tell them that if you want to become a lawyer, take all of the English and writing courses that you can, because communication is probably the single most important skill for lawyers within any particular field, at least in my opinion.
Right.
Second, I would encourage them to work in get a job, summers, that might introduce them to labor unions.
Like an apprenticeship, maybe a little tag along?
Well, no, I mean actually a blue-collar job.
Okay.
Maybe in
Oh,
a
I see
mill
what you're saying.
like I did. I learned a lot
yep,
about
yep.
how unions operate that
Right.
way, and a little bit about the labor management relationship. And then as they progress toward or into law school, they can intern at that point. And I, quite frankly, I don't steer people toward the labor side. I think, if good lawyers, good people only go on the union side, there won't be good people and good lawyers on the management side, and it takes good lawyers on both sides for it to work. So I just try to have them get some experience and figure out for themselves whether this is a field that they might.
Well, I can tell you,
enjoy
by
practicing.
my experience, and I can tell you because I've met many of the attorneys in your firm, and I know them all pretty well. Very bright and just really good and want to help, and they just have that knack to really dig in and get some things done and help people and represent properly.
That's what we look for when we hire.
Yeah.
We look for people of good character, people who have great interpersonal skills, because a lot of the job is dealing with people, sometimes difficult people, and they have to be smart and committed to the field.
Well,
if people out there fit that description,
no, I get it.
you're
I mean,
a candidate.
and knowing as I know some things early on when I became president of my union, I needed to be spoon-fed to understand some things that are going on. Even with my many years of experience that I've had with unions, it was a complete culture change for me. So, there's a lot of questions I had to ask, and there's a lot of assistance that I had to get, and I'm going to tell you, man, it's a difficult business. very difficult business, you know.
It's challenging, it's stressful, but for me, it's a good stress.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, you've had great success. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna switch gears for a minute, and I'm gonna talk about the Boston Marathon. And I'm a big fan of the Boston Marathon. I've attended it, ran it, enjoyed it for years and years and years. It's been in my family for so long. I mean, living around the corner down here in Union Square, it was just a stone's throw for us to go and watch the marathon. Bill Rogers, Greg Meyer, Joan Benoit, all those great runners way back then. And even now today, I enjoyed watching it. I know that the horrific incident in 2013, when that occurred, it really hit home. I mean, I know anybody, you can talk to anybody, and they had somebody that they knew was there or close by, or something occurred, something happened. And I know that my son had called me and said, yeah, I'm okay, Dad, don't worry about it. I'm like, what's going on? And of course, we put the TV on and we found out. That's how things just came about. So knowing what I know, and this incident, what I have is there was a gun battle. This is directly from your website. A gun battle raged, and pipe bombs exploded on the streets of Watertown. Your firm was called to the Watertown Police Headquarters to assist officers returning from the pursuit and fight with the Boston Marathon bombers. Can you tell me a little bit about how that all happened?
Well, just as your son called you, my son, who was living in Watertown at the time, was within blocks of the shootout area, and I was getting ready for bed, and the phone rang, and he said, "Turn the TV on." So I turned it on, and I heard the gunshots and the bomb going off, and wow!
Yeah,
I mean,
it was real. Yeah,
it was
firefight.
incredible. So of course, stay in the house, and
yeah.
And then shortly after that, the Mike Martin, the president of the Watertown Police Association, which is a client of mine, called and said, "Can you come into the station? We want you to debrief with the officers, and they have to write their reports, and would like you to assist to make sure, anticipating that these reports would be seen by many eyes, scrutinized by many eyes over time. We wanted to make sure that they were accurate, that the ambiguities were cleared, and that they were readable."
Well, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I can tell you, it bothered me. And it's that kind of a thing. Like, when something happens, and it's weighing heavy on you, you'll wake up and I said, I'm going to put the TV on. That night is, I believe, the unfortunate shooting of Sean Collier, and it was just really horrific. What happened? The whole thing was just so bad, and I would have to believe that your law firm, and you had to deal with a lot of debriefing, because there was quite a firefight that went on in Watertown at that point in time.
A lot of officers involved.
Right, and the streets were filled with police officers, and I don't know what they call those squads there, but they had, you name them.
I'm stunned that more people weren't injured or killed.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that it turned out with so few casualties. Unfortunately, the T officer was seriously injured, and thank God he's recovered largely.
And a lot of victims, a lot of amputee victims from that marathon.
Yes.
3 people were killed in that, and that was really that's something that'll always stay with us. I remember Tom Menino, when he was mayor back then, mentioned something about it. I also remember he said something in 9/11 that this day is going to change us for the rest of our lives, and that's the way it's going to be. So things like that back in 9/11 and this incident in 2013, it changed. It changes everything about the way we do things, and the cavalier way in which we go about our lives, because you let your guard down and things happen, and we want to be able to live in a free society. That's what it's all about, and that was really something I think that really woke us up.
Well, it did, and no one ever expected that anything like that would happen, particularly at the marathon. particularly in the aftermath of it. And you're right, horrific is the right word.
Exactly. So, you know, that was something, and these are things that I don't know sometimes, because until I find out that your law firm was representing them, and I thought it was, I think if anybody was going to do it, I'm happy it was your law firm that was there to help them out.
Thank you.
You know.
It was, you know, in real time. It was going on in real time.
I know, and we all lived it. So let's get into something here. And here's what I got, okay? And I've got some things that I cut out, and I'm a weird kind of a guy. I keep things, you know. And this is the Crowley Gates press conference where Al McDonald addresses the media. And I've got a photo of Alan here, and it says here, the Cambridge Police Sergeant James Crowley listens to Cambridge Police Officers and Association Attorney Alan McDonald, who, as he addresses the media at a press conference on July 24, 2009 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Sergeant Crowley arrested University Professor Louis Gates for an alleged home invasion on July 16, 2009. Now, outside of all of that, you know, thinking about all of that, this is something that you were involved in as well. Now, this is a very high-profile case that occurred, unfortunate incident. It was just basically your basic B&E, and you know, I know that Professor Crowley, that was his home, and he wasn't.
Professor Gates.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Professor Gates. He was not making it into his own home. But the way this whole thing ended up, I think, ended up really well. Can you give me an idea of how this whole thing came about? I mean, I know you represent the Cambridge police officers as well.
Yes.
Do you know, can you just tell me what happened, and you got a call from somebody? Because I've got, you know, this press conference happened. I happened to put on TV. Someone told me to put the TV on, and Alan's on TV. And before we know it, there's a press conference about this whole thing.
Yes, well, when it first happened, it was an unfortunate incident, but it didn't seem that newsworthy beyond a day or two.
Yeah.
So I represent both the Cambridge patrol officers and the Cambridge superior officers, of which Sergeant Crowley was a member. And leadership and I huddled and said, oh, you know, let's just leave it alone and see if it dies out on its own accord. And then the president mentioned something about it in his news conference in Washington, and the whole thing developed a life of its own. We decided that we had to get Sergeant Crowley's point of view out, side of the story out, because it hadn't been told.
Right.
So an arrangement was made for him to give a statement on Channel 7, and then we followed that up with a national press conference. Didn't know it was going to be national. We thought it was actually going to be a local press conference. It turned out, you know, CNN and Fox.
And then basically it flew off from there. So I want to say one thing. This is the first time. Alan told me before we went on the air here. This is the first time Alan's even discussed this. Were there other people who wanted to talk about this?
We had about 200 media calls at our office. Okay. This is the first interview I've ever given on this subject. I was asked by Larry King to appear on his show. The president of the Superior Officers, Dennis O'Connor, and I were invited to the Today Show. Good Morning America called, looking for and numerous others. But our strategy was not to throw fuel on the fire. Our strategy was to get our side of the story out there and then hope that it died down. The President Obama, after the press conference, put a call into Sergeant Crowley, and that provided.
Then the White House called.
Yes.
So I think what happened was Deval Patrick, then governor, he chimed in on it. Obama chimed in on it. I think what they wanted to do, I think they were really trying to say, look, let's get something. Let's get real here. Let's get this thing repaired on both sides. And I think for the most part, from what I'm getting, is that it became what I'm seeing here is called the Beer Summit. That's right up my alley. If you're going to have the Beer Summit, someone needs to let me know, because, you know, that's my thing, man. I love to have a good craft beer every now and then.
Yeah, especially with the president.
Especially with the, I mean, look at, hold on, because I got a picture here of Crowley and Gates at the Beer Summit. I know you probably can't see that, but we will put it up for you to see, right? It's going to be up there. And everything has a happy ending.
Well, it had a reasonably happy ending. We met with Professor Gates at the White House before the summit, before the beer was consumed. He was very gracious. It appeared to us that both sides were looking to tone down the volume of the controversy. I assisted in negotiating the terms of the beer summit. I didn't get into what brand of beer they would have, but otherwise, who would be there, when it would happen.
I thought there was discussion of. I think there was discussion of who had what type of beer.
Well, I know, but I'm not going to say.
All right. We don't have to do that at all. But in the end, I want to show you this, and it's funny. I have a very vivid memory because I remember where I am whenever things happen. Sometimes it's just kind of weird like that. So, this is a picture, a photo of Alan with Melissa Hurley Sullivan.
Yes.
And
she was
our president.
We retained Melissa as a press consultant because there was so much media that we couldn't handle it ourselves.
Right,
so she was very, very helpful.
Another gentleman who I don't know who he is, but
that's Dennis O'Connor, the president of the Superior Officers.
I'm sorry. Okay, so it was autographed.
Yes.
By President Obama as well. Yes. I think it was fantastic. So this is certainly a happy ending, and it's just I was in my backyard and I called you for something. He said that I'm just about ready to take a photo with the president. I go, okay. So you know what? Not everybody gets to do things like that, Alan, and it's really amazing. So I want to get to a couple quick questions here, okay? And I won't belabor it. Excuse the pun. So you've been working for workers for years. You've been doing this for a long, long time. And my first question right out of the gate is, when it comes to this particular issue, is, in your many experiences with other cities and towns you represent, do those workers face the same financial challenges as municipal workers do here in the city of Somerville, or is this an only in Somerville thing where this happens just here?
Well, I wouldn't. Collective bargaining is not necessarily an easy process. Both sides have obligations, interests, goals. Most places work them out with, without going to war with each other. Somerville is unique in that I don't think we represent 70 different labor organizations. Maybe half of them are public sector cities and towns around eastern Massachusetts. And we really haven't had as much trouble consistently over the last decade or so that we've had in Somerville.
Okay.
Both unfair labor practice charges in numbers that are stunning.
Right.
Difficulty getting contracts. Of the 3 unions I represent, and add the fire to that, which I don't represent, all are without contracts and have been without contracts for several years.
As well as Local 3.
Local 3 also, yes. Right.
Custodian. So, I do get that. So, it's becoming more and more difficult to get proper compensation right here in the city of Somerville, and I don't really think that it's necessary. I think that I'm hoping, and I'm very optimistic.
You have to be.
Oh, in this business, if you're not optimistic, then you're dead in the water. And so, one thing that's very important, I want to let the people watching understand that, unions, we're here, and you know what, I've said this before, this was not a choice for me when I became president. It wasn't a choice for me when I first became a union member at Local 26 with the food service workers at Harvard University. This is just the way my life played out, and it works for me, and I'm fine with it. But it's just it's stunning to me that we have to work so hard in our jobs, and not have the ability. We have the ability, but sometimes it just gets to be so complicated for us, and people become disillusioned. The workers out there are very good workers, and they deserve a very fair compensation, especially in this economy. And it is a booming economy. Somerville's a rare economy in its own. If anybody wants to challenge me on that, I welcome it. But I believe that to be true. Do you have any idea why you think something like this is going on? And do you think there's a way to correct it right now?
Well, what's going on? I just see a difficult administration
Mhm.
that does not want to work with the unions, the city's public worker unions.
Mhm.
I can't explain why, but
Okay.
that's the sense I
No,
get.
that's a fair answer. That's a fair answer. So we're getting close to the end, Alan, and that's one of the some of the things I wanted to talk about. And one of the things we are going to be talking about too. I want to ask Alan to come back at some point in time, because this is more of not a soapbox, but what we'd like to do is give a little bit of education to some of our people, especially the people that are out here that don't really have representation. Because one of my most important things I'd like to do is I like to let people know about Family Medical Leave Act and some of the things, some of the benefits that are out there, what the people working and fighting for maternity leave, for mothers. I had Carolyn Jordan here. We had a discussion about equal pay for men and women. We had the nurses in here, and you represent nurses.
Represent the Massachusetts Nurses
And we do have a big
Association
problem.
and the nurses in your union.
There you go. And so, and question one is a very confusing, hot-button issue. So if you want more staffing in favor of the nurses, you're going to vote yes.
Correct.
And the administrative side, who has a different view on this whole thing, are talking about a no vote, because they're saying the sky's going to collapse.
They don't want the cost
Yeah, it's
to
all
go
about,
up.
yeah, I get it.
It's all about the money.
Right, it is all about the money. It is all about the money. So we've been very lucky, Jude and I, to have some really good guests in here. And I know that, you don't give interviews very often, but it's fun to have you in the studio. So one of the things I want to do is, towards the end here, is there's this Invictus poem by William Ernest Henley. And I don't know, it's just something about it that's just, I really liked, because it just seemed like it's something that you always feel, if you're a leader of a union, even if you're a union representative, you always feel like this, it's very difficult, and people become disillusioned. So, not that I am, because I'm not, but Invictus, I'm going to give you the meaning of that, and this is Latin. It's unconquerable and undefeated. Those two words say it right there, okay, in Latin. So we have a gentleman who has a show here as well, who is he's a poet. He has his own poet show. He'll probably say, this guy has, he's looking at this. I mean, this is a wonderful poem. I'm sure that he's had this on before. So I want to close the show out by giving you this poem by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unabowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Alan McDonald, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
I'm going to present you with an SMEA T-shirt. Like you don't have enough of these, right?
No,
but
thank you.
this is a.
We'll add it to my collection.
You can add it to your collection, but this is an only ensemble moment kind of a thing, and we've been running this thing for a while now, so I love it. It's great.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So
I'm honored to represent the association, and your leadership has been a great joy as well to me.
thank you. Thank
I think
you.
unconquerable is a good appellation for you.
Well, hey, you know what? It's not all bad. It's not bad. We're going to do some really great things on this show. We're actually considering having some music on the show as well, because labor is music, right? I mean, we all labor. There's rehearsals, you name it, and we're going to get something in a big studio. We have a little bit of fun here. Can't take the stress off, Alan. You know what I mean?
Understood.
All right. So
Understood.
we will be talking to you next time. Want to thank you all very much for joining us. Remember, in unity there is strength. Peace.